Week 2 of the NFL preseason is upon us. There is a lot of NFL news that is moving guys around in the market if you're currently drafting in your fantasy football drafts. Today, we're going to project 4 players that we expect to rise before week 1 and fall before week 1 right here on Player Profiler. Chuck, we talked about it at the top there. There's a lot of NFL news that's shaking up the draft boards right now. Guys are going to start rising, guys are going to start falling. That's what we do here on the Rise and Fallers show. But today we're going to do a little bit of projecting. We're going to try to look ahead and get a feel for players that we expect to start ticking up boards and ticking down boards. And we'll break all that down.
Mhm.
Are you ready to just jump right into it?
I am. This whole offseason project has been about identifying why markets are moving, and I like that we're going to project how markets are going to move. And we got some good stuff for you guys.
Yeah, we're coming out to only a couple more shows here, but we've enjoyed it so far. It's been a really, really good series. We're going to have more content. Chuck and myself will still be here on Player Profiler in the season. But let's just jump right into our first player. It's going to be Tet McMillan. And, Chuck, you've had a lot of feelings about Tet McMillan. I feel like your emotions have gone all over the place with Tet McMillan. So this is a really good one to talk about. Right now, Tet is wide receiver 29, pick 61 overall on Sleeper. We both have Tet as a riser in terms of we expect him to tick up ahead in draft boards. Right now, McMillan is a guy that, I expect to go ahead of Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, possibly even Xavier Worthy, somewhere around there, a couple picks ahead of where he's going now. And is there anything in your mind, Chuck, that would have you draft Ted at this point? I mean, is there anything in the preseason that you saw?
Mm.
Any changes in your feelings of this wide receiver room or just Carolina in general? Or are
Yeah.
you still looking at Ted as a fade?
So this is where I get to just completely method act the theme of today, right? Which is guessing who's going to rise. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm investing. I appreciate it. Most of my beef with Tet started with this whole name shebang, which we don't have to rehash. We had that conversation on the show already. You can't tell me what to call you. Even you're calling him Tet during the show, so I love that. But he was my favorite receiver in
On
the draft,
purpose.
pre-draft. Loved him. The landing spot, I think, is good long term. But this year, man, the board, where he's going for a rookie wide receiver on the Carolina Panthers, I'm just not into it. But I'm going to guess what the drafters are going to do, right? You get to that point on the board where you look at Devontae Adams going right ahead of him. Stafford's in a mobile home, basically, on the side of the field right now. Evans is the third rail of fantasy. A lot of people still don't like to touch Mike Evans, especially with this Ibuka breakout. And then Worthy has this whole Rice thing. People are trying to figure out what his role in the offense is going to be when it's fully rocking. I think they're going to see Tet as an easy click after those guys. And you know what? If you want to do that after a 1 preseason game or 2 preseason game against the league's worst secondary in the Cleveland Browns, go ahead. If you want to do that because of some slow motion catches over the middle with no pads on, go ahead. If you want to do that because he's lining up across from Thielen and Coker, go ahead. But for me, I'm just not as excited. During Bryce Young's hot stretch last year, the last from week 12 on, he completed 20 completions a game with a 61% completion percentage. That's beneath Aaron Rodgers, beneath Aiden O'Connell, beneath Caleb Williams, tied for Drew Lock as the lowest of any starting quarterback who played at least 6 games over that stretch. So I think we're overestimating what's on the table for this Carolina passing offense. I think it's still going to be run heavy. I think I really like Dowdle. I really like Chuba Hubbard. And I like a lot of the other guys as far as, maybe not target earners, but, their role in the offense. So I don't think you're getting Neighbors. I don't think you're getting BTJ. I don't think you're getting Lad McConkey. I think of a lot of other people are going to believe that.
Yeah, I'm on the complete other side here than you are. I have Ted as my wide receiver 18. It's
Mm,
not because of that game. I didn't need
mm,
to see that. It was encouraging and maybe a
mm,
little confirmation bias.
mhm,
But overall, I have him behind Mike Evans and ahead of DJ Moore.
mm,
I think, look, Tet is a guy that I've said it time and time again. I really think he could have a 25 to 30% target share
mm.
in this offense. This Carolina defense doesn't project to be that good still, and I'm not expecting them to be. So I expect them to be in higher scoring games, right? playing maybe from behind,
Mhm.
right? And they play in a division. I've talked about this before that has some pretty bad defenses. They play in a stadium that's got good weather, so that's usually a good sign for points. They play in a division that has two domes and
Mhm.
one plays in Florida, so that's more good weather as well. And overall, I'm buying into it, right? McMillan was targeted 5 times with the starters out there with Bryce Young in the
Mhm.
preseason game. He caught 2 of them. He had 43 yards. One of them was an over the shoulder 30-yard catch. And that over the shoulder catch is something that I've kind of expected to be a sweet spot for Tet. A lot of people say that he doesn't have great separation, but what he does have is really good body control and late hands as well. And he
Mhm.
showed it there with Bryce. And I think that's also a really a nice it's a sweet spot for Bryce too. Those are the kinds of throws that he really can excel at.
Mhm.
The other thing I would say too is there was a slant that was not connected on in the end zone for him and Bryce. That if you watch that timing of that play, Bryce was throwing it before Tet even made his in cut on the slant. And I just think like he's going to be looking Tet's way early and often. The connection looked really strong, and I'm really really bought in to Tet in this offense. Now let's play a little bit of a game here, Chuck.
Mhm.
Since I've already kind of shared where I have Tet McMillan, and who I have him sandwiched in between in my rankings, which again is Mike Evans ahead of him one spot and DJ
Mhm.
Moore behind him one spot. Let's talk about some guys going around Tet, and you tell me who you would rather. Okay,
Sure.
Tet or Jamison Williams?
Tet.
Okay, so Jameson goes one spot ahead of Tet, so you prefer Tet.
Yep.
Zay Flowers or Tet McMillan?
Zay.
Okay,
Yep.
Rashee Rice.
Rice, but I'm in an ultra minority there, but Rice. Yep.
All right, we'll get to Rice in a second here.
Yeah.
Devonta Smith or Tet?
Tet. Tet. So
Okay,
now we're with that. The theme here is established ones versus maybe super twos or one Bs is what we're going with here. Yeah.
okay. And this one might be a little interesting. Xavier Worthy, because I don't think you're very
Mm.
high on Worthy.
No, I'll take Tet here just for just for the viewers to know that I'm not an all or nothing guy. I want you guys to have some equity in my takes.
Okay. Last one, just because
Mm,
not archetypes a little bit similar. What about
mhm.
Cortland Sutton?
Oh, that's a really good one because that is like I think who the Panthers want to be is what the Broncos were last year. They want to make it easy on their quarterback. They want a big-bodied, physical, win at the catch, tall wide receiver, and they want a strong offensive line to get him space. So I'll take Courtland Lutton. I'll take Courtland Sutton because I saw them do it, and I think they're going to do it even better this year.
Okay. Okay.
Mm,
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to note, and then we'll close out this, is we talked about Rashee Rice, and I
mhm,
have concerns about Rice. Rice actually, spoiler alert, is not one of the guys we're talking about
mhm,
today. I think he's going to fall. I have concerns about Rice. I think 6 game suspension
mhm,
is in the very much in the cards, and probably or possibly more. I also don't really love where he's going,
mhm.
or what his like. We're talking about September 30th, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about him playing like week 5 on, right?
Mhm,
Or being suspended week 5 on, and then they have a bye week in between there. And then you're really getting pressed right up into the NFL playoffs for fantasy. I have concerns there with Rice. I'm very, very severely dropping him down in my boards.
mhm.
So I would definitely take Tet over Rice. I take Tet over all the guys that we talked about,
Sure.
but that's not surprising because I've already kind of told you how high I have him in my rankings.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell the viewers before we move on
Mm,
your thoughts on the Rice situation?
mhm,
How are you approaching that in your drafts if he's on the board, somewhere
mhm.
around, let's say, fourth, fifth round?
Yeah.
That's about where he's going right now.
I'm approaching it like I'm getting a second round value, which I would have had on him if he was just a stand up citizen. If he was the coolest guy on the planet and wasn't getting in trouble, I think he would have been a second round pick. I'm approaching that as getting that in that fourth, fifth round. I think the NFL is going to baby back ditch. They're not going to suspend the best offensive player on the Chiefs for the playoff push down the stretch. He's going to get 4 games maybe, and it's going to be like probably in October, and you're going to be sitting there 4-0 anyways. Bring in some Jordan Addison, bring in some Brandon Ayuk, and just you're starting out hot in fantasy is the most important thing. It puts you in a power position in trades, puts you in you don't make panic decisions in your lineups. And if you're 4-0, it means you should be on this show giving us advice as much as we're giving out advice. So you'll be okay.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying about the hot start. I have concerns about it though.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I would need to get a really solid discount on Rice because it depends on your league. Some leagues don't let you put guys suspended on your IR. Some leagues don't even have IR spots. So if he's roster clogging and you start getting to the heart of the middle of the season, and guys start to get injured, guys have buys, then you're kind of in a tough spot where it's like you may have to try to trade him at a discount because you're suffering from injuries and roster clogs from other players with buys. So that's my biggest concern with Rice, but we can probably talk about him maybe even next week, on that show, but let's put a pin in that and maybe tease out maybe for next week. Let's talk about the next player here, who another guy that's a very polarizing topic right now. It's Quinshon Judkins. News comes down yesterday that Quinshon Judkins, Browns running back that they took high in the second round, will not face charges after July arrest for domestic violence. Chuck, this Browns team is fielding a very, I'm trying to be PC here, fielding a very strange team right now with Deshaun Watson, who he's still with the team. He's still at practices. He might not be suited up. Quinshon Judkins, and now new wide receiver Isaiah Bond, who was a rookie from Texas that was projected second round, who also, same day the ruling comes out for Quinshon Judkins, he also gets his charges dropped and now finds himself with the Cleveland Browns. But Quinshon Judkins, pick 100, RB 37. Let's talk about it, Chuck. What are your thoughts on him? Is he somebody that let's talk about, same with the Rice thing. How are you approaching Quinshon Judkins in your draft?
I'm approaching him like there's not going to be a suspension. Like he's not like missing all the time he's missed. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Like he's going to be the focal point of the attack. And like you're getting a player like that you could say about a lot of all these other guys, right? You could say similar things about a Trevion Henderson. You could say similar things about an Alvin Kamara. Now, obviously different players, different perspectives, but like guys who are the dudes on teams that need them to be the dudes. So he does have a little bit of an uphill battle to climb, but I don't think any of those are for personal reasons or player reasons, right? The Browns offensive line was one of the 4 worst run blocking units in the league last year. Kyle Stefanski does like to mix in some running backs. He did it with Nick Chubb at his best. And this is not the Browns with Nick Chubb at his best. The quarterback situation is a mess. Can you imagine if this guy has to have 5 different starting quarterbacks over the course of the season, which I think is very, very possible. There's not exactly a whole lot of other weapons on this offense to take pressure off of. I think Judy's fine. I think Njoku's very good, but I think this could be an easy offense to kind of bottle up. And the writing's on the wall for whatever this team wants to be, which I'm not even sure if they know. I like him. I like the discount. I like the touches, but that's just why I don't have him any higher.
Yeah, I mean it's totally fair. I don't blame people for being a little bit hesitant on taking him. We also project this Browns offense to probably not be very good. We don't even know who the starting I mean, I think we know it's probably Joe Flacco, but their quarterback situation's messy. The offensive line is good, but getting up there in age a little bit, and they actually have a lot of guys that are potentially leaving. A lot of guys on aging and expiring deals. But overall, I'm targeting Quinshon Judkins right at that RB 37 right now, pick 100. I do want to be in on Judkins because if you were drafting in best ball, right, and I know best ball and redraft are completely different, but best ball drafts had Judkins going somewhere around RB 15 and RB 18. Right. And that was before the suspension. And that's also in a format that pushes up wide receivers. And he was still going around that 5th or 6th round. So that's it. I'm not concerned about a running back missing time, trying to get acclimated into a system with the Browns, because quite honestly, he's about a month out. He was there for OTAs. Okay. We're talking about it being a month out from the season. Now he isn't at practice yet. So, I don't even think he's signed his contract yet. So that has
Mhm.
to get taken care of. But if you're telling me the start of next week, he's going to be out there and he has 3.5 weeks to prepare, for the NFL week one, for week one, I'm
Mhm.
okay with that. And for running back, I mean, running back is one of the easier positions to pick up in the NFL when it comes to a playbook. And it's one of the easier transitions from college to the pros. And so I don't have a concern about Quinshon Judkins starting off slow. I do want to be in on him because I think he was an elite prospect, or maybe elite. I don't want to throw that around loosely, but he was a very, very good running back prospect who they took extremely high in this draft. We know Kevin Stefanski likes to run the football. They threw it a ton last year, at the highest in the NFL, but that was really more to do with the fact that running game was terrible. I think they want to get back to running the football this season. I think Judkins is going to be a good value. And what I
Mhm.
would say, Chuck, is I would take Quinshon Judkins over Caleb Johnson.
Yep.
And I mean, is that a hot take? Am I kind of a little crazy there, or do you feel the same?
I mean, if you're asking me if I want to watch 1 second of the Aaron Rodgers Steelers, I mean, at least my eyes are used to seeing whatever this, ass bucket Cleveland's been putting out for year in, year out, forever now. I would never fault anybody for that. And I would say to people who are hesitant about drafting, a running back on a potentially bad offense, I would look at players last year who had similar draft capital to Judkins, Jonathan Taylor, RB5 last year, Chuba Hubbard, RB12 last year, and you keep going down. Breece Hall, RB18 last year. You can DeAndre Swift, RB22 last year. I think that's the range. I don't know if he's going to be RB6, but RB22 to that RB15, kind of sum up in there, maybe some spike weeks. I'd be feeling good and hot.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Caleb Johnson goes as the RB 28.
Mm,
He goes right behind Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco. I would prefer Pollard over Judkins. I could
mm,
maybe even make a case for Pacheco. I know you're gonna scoff at that because you're a big Pacheco fan. Van, I could even make the case of him over
mm.
DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
I would prefer him behind Montgomery, Aaron Jones, still Tony Pollard, James Conner, Trevion Henderson. Those are the guys. But when you start getting to DeAndre Swift, definitely not. I'm not touching Joe Mixon. I've been off him all
Yep.
year, and I'm still not going to get in on him. I could make the argument for even Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Caleb Johnson. These are guys that don't have high ceilings with receptions,
Mhm.
and so I could see myself taking him over those guys. And that's probably about as high as I would go.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that pick 75-ish, I would say.
We've been debating this range on several shows throughout this year, and we've been looking for a lifeline, and I think we're getting it in August. So I want to appreciate the NFLPA. I want to appreciate all the law enforcement officials out there. Thank you for your help.
All right. Well, let's move on to our first faller. And by the way, we talked about Quinshon Judkins,
Mm.
and we didn't specifically say it, but I expect him to rise, Chuck, right? Pick
Yes.
100, RB 37. I don't expect him to be going behind guys like Jalen Warren, Tyrone Tracy, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins, Jordan Mason. These are all guys that he goes behind. I don't expect him to be behind any of those guys.
Yeah.
I can maybe hear Tyrone Tracy, maybe B Rob, but I don't expect him to be behind any of the other guys that I just named.
Yeah. He was the biggest faller of the summer. He's going to rebound.
Yeah, I would agree. Next guy we're going to talk about here is Aaron Jones, who was a guy that you picked out today. He's going as RB 25, pick 54 off the board per sleeper ADP on Fantasy Pros. Look, this is a 30-year-old running back, Chuck. Comes out recently, the OC of the Vikings talks about Jordan Mason's receiving ability and how he's a complete player. We're hearing, Jordan Mason could be the guy that gets looks at the goal line, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of steam for Jordan Mason right now, and not really much negative news on Aaron Jones. He's been healthy. All reports are that he's looked good in camp. Why did you pick Aaron Jones as a guy that you expect to fall in the coming weeks? Tell the viewers what you're thinking.
Yeah, this one I think is just kind of like something that happens every year. Not only is it an ageist scenario where I feel like all you sick bastards that Aaron Jones got you through your season last year around that seventh, eighth round, 1,500 scrimmage yards, 51 receptions, 7 touchdowns. But look, The team obviously dictated what they want to do. They move on from Sam Darnold. They sign Jordan Mason. I don't think Sam Darnold's throwing 35 touchdowns again. I don't think he's finishing eighth in pass. I don't think the Vikings are finishing eighth in passing attempts with J.J. McCarthy. And I think Aaron Jones is going to turn 31 during the season this year. And from all accounts, beat reporters, the coaching staff, everybody, even the players themselves, this is going to be a 50-50 split, or at least a very strong committee. Jordan Mason has looked incredible in camp. He was the only one who got action during the first preseason game. They're keeping Jones on ice because they want him for that long stretch. But as far as what people are going to be looking at the board, and they're going to be looking at this peer group, and they're going to say, do I want a guy who's in a similar situation but younger, like a Tony Pollard, like a David Montgomery? Or do I want a guy who's in a similar situation and just not as good? Maybe you want a Brian Robinson Jr. because you want a piece of that Commanders rushing attack. Or you want Jordan Mason, who is nipping right on the heels. Do you want a guy who could go from being a 50-50 back to if Aaron Jones gets injured, then maybe you have the lead guy in a Vikings offense with a rookie quarterback? I think these are the kind of decisions that people are going to be making over the next month. They're going to be looking for something new. Everybody wants the young hot stud. They had the old bull. I personally don't appreciate it, but I know that's what you guys are into these days.
Well, I would say this. So before I give my take, Chuck, are you going to be buying that discount from Aaron Jones, or are you looking at Jordan Mason at his current cost, which is about pick 100, somewhere around there? Are you buying Aaron Jones at that cost, or are you buying into that smoke and that talk about Jordan Mason maybe taking some of that opportunity away from Aaron Jones?
So this is where it sucks, because I actually had been drafting a ton of Jordan Mason over the offseason until his price just continues to go up and up. But that's usually the range where I start to pivot to like maybe grab a tight end, maybe grab a wide receiver. I don't really love those kind of, I don't think it's an RB dead zone this year, but it's definitely, like a poor man's version of it. So if I had to pick, gun to my head, I'm taking Aaron Jones over Jordan Mason. But at cost, if they could drift a little bit further apart, I wouldn't mind passing on Jones to take him. But I just have been loving some of the other players that have kind of been going in that range, especially wide receiver wise.
Yeah, my problem about Jordan Mason, and look, don't get me wrong, I think Jordan Mason is talented. I think he can be a guy who ultimately can get work on the goal line and be effective over there. But my problem with Jordan Mason is the receiving ability, right? People are going to say, well, he was never given the opportunity, never given the chance. The God's honest truth is Jordan Mason played and was the main guy for the 49ers for a majority of the season and only had 11 receptions. And we've seen this, and as this offense throw the football to the running back position. I get it. CMC is a great passing or receiving back, but Shanahan likes to feature running backs out of the backfield. Like that's just a thing. And so the fact that Mason, when you take a look at his production last year, just 14 targets, right? 65th in the NFL. Now, granted, he did miss some time, and there was also a point where Christian McCaffrey came back for I think 1 or 2 games before getting hurt again, but when you look at Jordan Mason, his route participation, 33.1% last year. That's routes run per team pass play. And he was ranked 25 in the NFL for route participation for the running back position. His routes run, he ran 125 routes last year, 125 routes, and was only targeted 14 times. That's concerning for me. Only a 4.4% target share. And I just don't look at him as a guy that's going to have much upside as a receiver. He's going to be a guy that in standard leagues and, maybe half point PPR, he's going to have more value because he's not going to catch the ball a ton. And I think he's going to score touchdowns. But overall, Jordan Mason, I'm not there yet, especially at his cost to how it's risen. I'm with you in the fact, Chuck, that his range is about where like I like to start to target the tight ends and the quarterback position, and I've pretty much hit on a ton of running backs and wide receivers at that point. If Aaron Jones slips, I'm going to be buying him, Chuck. Right now in my rankings currently, I have Aaron Jones as my RB24. I think he has high end RB2 upside if he can stay healthy. And Aaron Jones, we're hearing this talk about Jordan Mason, getting goal line work. But look, Aaron Jones is a guy that we've seen consistently be a guy who gets work at the goal line,
Yep.
in the red zone. We've seen him catch a lot of passes in the red zone. He had 57 red zone touches alone last year, number 9 in the NFL. He's going to catch a lot of passes. I think Jordan Mason's going to be a nice complement in this
Mhm.
offense, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that, unless you're playing in deep standard leagues, you're not going to be starting him in your lineups. I could be wrong. I get Jordan Mason getting up there in age. I mean, Aaron Jones is getting up there in age, and this team likes him. I believe they do, but Aaron Jones is still really, really good. He looked effective last year, and as long as he's healthy, I'm going to draft him, and I'll gladly take any discount that I get on him.
Yeah, and I think something important to remember too is that last year was the first year since 2018 where Aaron Jones didn't have another rusher on the team that had over 100 attempts. He's usually been in a committee. AJ Dillon led the Packers in rushing attempts 2 of the 3 years he was there. Jamal Williams got over 110 plus attempts 2 of the years he played with Aaron Jones. You guys don't remember any of those seasons. You remember Aaron Jones dominating as a high efficiency player that is a ball end zone ball hawk. That's why you're drafting him where you're taking him this year.
Awesome. Hey, let's move on to our last player here, and then we'll get you guys out of here. It's going to be Breece Hall, running back for the New York Jets.
Mm.
Breece Hall right now, RB14, pick 33. And yeah, this is a guy that we have falling. I picked him, Chuck, as a guy I expect to fall. I know he's falling because he's falling for me a little bit. I just updated my rankings. I have Alvin Kamara now ahead of Breece Hall, and I don't feel that upset about it. I love Breece Hall, but I have to buy into a little bit of the smoke here. Breece Hall's my RB15, so I'm just slightly below consensus. I expect him to possibly drop. We've already seen James Cook start to go ahead of Breece Hall now. And
Yeah.
it's in a large part because we've heard the drumbeat, right? Aaron Glenn this offseason, we've heard him talk about how this is going to be a 3-back committee approach. And I think a lot of people are buying into that. Braylon Allen looks really, really good. And I'm buying into it slightly. I think it's still going to be, a good season for Breece Hall. I think he's still going to be very productive. I think people are projecting this to be a Montgomery and Gibbs situation a little bit too much. And we
Mhm.
just kind of, I think people use that really, really lazily,
Yeah.
to use that for a lot of running back rooms. But the drumbeat has gotten louder for Braylon Allen, and he's looked really, really good by all reports and what we saw in preseason so far. And so that's why I think the community is going to start taking Breece Hall down a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a sharp drop, but I could see Breece Hall being like an early 4th-round pick, and guys like even Trevion Henderson maybe getting some love as possibly, being picked ahead of him. It would not surprise me. Amaron Hampton goes behind Breece Hall as well. I could
Mhm.
see Amaron Hampton with the recent news on Najee Harris probably missing 4 games this year. I just saw
Yep.
today is a very strong possibility. I think Hampton has a chance to go ahead of him. I think Kamara. I think Kenneth Walker probably stays where he's at until he starts logging full weeks of practice healthy.
Mhm.
But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm still going to be drafting Breece Hall. I'll be very happy to get a discount because I do think he's a little bit expensive at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you because, for a top 15 running back by ADP for most of the offseason, all he's been talked about is he's in a committee, trade rumors, contract negotiations. It's been kind of hard to watch, and I've been kind of quiet on it because I'm right there with you. I love the opportunity, the idea of getting him at a discount. I look at him like I could be getting 4th-round Bucky Irving. Now, it may not be a top 5 Buccaneers offense, but I find his role to be, Bucky Irving shares a backfield with 2 other guys who are worked in different ways, and he's performing like a boss. And I think that Breece Hall is just as talented as far as when it comes to being a great rusher and catching passes out of the backfield. But I don't blame the community for this one. We don't know what this team is going to look like. There hasn't been a whole lot of hype behind Breece. He's playing with Justin Fields, which, that kind of goes either way. I'm not going to say it's good for him. I'm not going to say it's bad for him. But like you said, you named off the guys and you named off why they're rising. Trevion Henderson, preseason superstar. James Cook, newly signed. Kenneth Walker still has that backfield on a lock. And I'd actually that's my closest situational comp for him right now. Last year, I think a lot of people projected Zach Charbonnet to move closer towards kind of like a 50-50 split, or at least more of a committee. And he was John Cena during games when Kenneth Walker was fully healthy. He just didn't exist. Now, I don't know if it's going to be that extreme, but that's kind of what I'm hoping for when I click the pick on Breece Hall this year. The fact that he's probably going to have that pass catching role on lock really is where I think the majority of his value is going to be tied to. And this is going to be a team that, they have a quarterback that cannot really throw it that well, and he can hit those dump offs pretty decently. Let's get our guy back.
Yeah, I think Hall's going to be very, very involved in the receiving game. I know
Mm.
people are worried about the goal line touches. Let's be honest. How many goal line touches are there going to even be available for this Jets
Yeah.
offense? I mean, come on. Like, let's be real here. But before we
Mm,
get out of here, Chuck, one
mm,
last thing.
mm.
Who are you taking? Breece Hall or Alvin Kamara?
Ooh, I'm an Alvin Kamara guy by trade, but I don't know if I would recommend the general public on that one.
Okay. So but you specifically, your risk tolerance, you're willing to take Kamara.
Yeah, I think Kamara is what we want Breece Hall to be, but he just doesn't have an Allen, and he doesn't have a Davis, and he has an offensive coach that I trust very much.
Okay. Amari and Hampton.
Marion Hampton, I'm taking. Jim Harbaugh, that offensive line, they lost a piece, but it's still going to be a good rush unit. Greg Roman doesn't know how to do anything else. Hampton.
I think I know this answer here, but Chuba Hubbard.
Ooh, that's a really good one. You know what? I was a little higher than I wanted to be on Tet earlier, so let's poo-poo the Panthers a little bit. Give me Brees.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not surprised there. I assume James Conner, once you start getting to there,
Mhm.
you're still in. Is Trevion Henderson a guy you would consider?
He's definitely one I consider because the more I'm thinking about the pros of this offense and the more I'm thinking about the cons, you're talking about 10-1, and I think Henderson's going to be that potential league winning player come November and December.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would say, and then let's get out of here. I am hitting running backs very early in drafts this
Yes.
year. I think there's a pretty stark drop off after Chase Brown and Kyron. You start
Mm,
to get to James Cook, you get to Breece Hall, you get to Kamara. I think you can talk yourself into those guys, but I do think their costs are pretty expensive. Based on what the rest of the board looks like, and so I'm trying to acquire two running backs in the first 3 rounds, ideally three running backs
mhm.
in the first 5. And, guys like Trevion Henderson, who I might not have above Breece Hall, but I love him much more at his current cost than I do Breece Hall, who goes 22 spots ahead of him.
Yep.
So that's a little bit of insight into what I'm looking at, but that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, we're going to talk Rashee Rice. We're going to have a lot more fun next week.
Mm.
But thank you so much. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and a comment, and we'll see you guys next time.